welcome everyone. Good morning again to our Corrective Actions Unmasked the very first webinar that I'm hosting, hopefully the first of many. I will just run through some acknowledgements. So most of the content that I used for the presentation, of course, comes from the AS 9100D standard and the IEQG resources that are available to us through the Supply Chain Management Handbook, as well as other information that I gathered through auditor conferences and whatnot. The webinar is created, it's owned by Dagma Inc. It's copyright, however, you can access it after this presentation. It will be made available on YouTube. So if you ever want to just listen to the rerun, you will be able to access that as well. Some just conduct for the expectations for the webinar. Just that we ask that you keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking. The use of your camera, of course, is voluntary. It's up to you if you want to keep it on. We encourage participation. There will be a brief question period following the presentation, and it is a free webinar in free Zoom, so we have up to 40 minutes to discuss. Hopefully we don't go over time, but if we do, we may need to reconnect for the question period on the exact same link. Just a little bit about me as speaker, my introduction. Most of you have either worked with me or have met me through the auditing process. But my name is Dagma Makarski. I am an aerospace engineer. I graduated from U of T. I worked at Honeywell Aerospace first, then Pratt & Whitney Canada. Then I worked in the automotive industry. Still as an engineer, that's where I became responsible for the quality portion as well. So became internal auditor, started auditing the supply chain, and I went to work at Design Precision Castings. That's where I was a quality manager and really got to live and breathe the quality aspect of things from a supplier perspective. So, a broad background. For the last 12 years, I've been auditing, consulting, and training for the aerospace industry. And of course, I do see common trends out as I'm about auditing. So I wanted to just throw these webinars out there to share some information that may help you within your organizations to become stronger and better. So our first topic is on corrective actions. They are most often, of course, discussed and reviewed because they are outcomes of audits and other situations. So the objectives for our webinar today are to understand the difference between Section 8.7 and 10.2 for the nonconformity requirements. I do see some misunderstanding in some organizations, of course, so we will discuss that. Define nonconformity and requirements. Learn how to react and respond to nonconformities when they occur, and through the corrective actions. So our first segment, Nonconformities Unmasked, the differences between Section 8.7 and 10.2. So in Section 8.7, we have control of nonconforming outputs. This section talks about immediate containment and disposition of any nonconforming product or service that has occurred. So the focus is on identification and segregation of this nonconforming output. The focus is on correction, so immediate correction, preventing unintended use or delivery of course, the product or service, and document the actions that are taken. An example would be if a part fails inspection, Section 8.7 is going to help us ensure that it doesn't reach the customer. You're going to isolate it, label the part, identify it, and decide whether you're going to fix it, scrap it, accept it under special conditions. There is no root cause that is required under the requirements of Section 8.7. So you're not required to investigate why it happened, just control it and prevent further impact. Can you do it? Yes, you can. And that can lead to Section 10.2. If you find that the problem may be reoccurring or these problems may be systematic, so there's always a good opportunity to analyze the sources of our nonconformances coming out of production and, of course, the product and service that we provide. Section 10.2 is nonconformity and corrective action. So this kicks in when you need to eliminate the cause of a nonconformity to prevent reoccurrence. So this can be a continuation of what was identified in Section 8.7, or it can have a completely new source. The key focus here is your root cause analysis, evaluating your systemic issues, implementing corrective actions, so permanent corrective actions, reviewing the effectiveness of those actions, and updating your risks and opportunities. So an example, with the same inspection failure keeps reoccurring, Section 10.2 will require us to dig deeper. Why is it reoccurring? Is there a training gap, a design flaw, or a supplier issue? So the documentation that's required is you have to document the nature of the nonconformance, the actions that are taken, and the results of the corrective action. So let's dive into Section 10.2, nonconformity and corrective action. So understanding the requirements and how we're going to deal with them. So first, before we go any further, we need to really understand what a nonconformity is. So the standard says when a nonconformity occurs, what is a nonconformity? It is defined as a non-fulfillment of a requirement. And what is this requirement? A requirement is the need or expectation that is stated. So it has to be stated somewhere. Requirements can be purchasing documents, they could be your specifications, they could be your drawings, your standards, or any legal requirements, for example, Transport Canada CAR 573 for aircraft maintenance. So when a nonconformity occurs, including any arising from complaints, complaints are received from the customer or any interested party. They can be verbal, they can be communicated through email, or formal request for corrective action. So a customer can send you their nonconformance form, or they can just verbally communicate it. So what are we going to do when this happens? We shall, and of course, remember, shall means has to, we have to, as an organization, react to the nonconformity and, as applicable, take action to control and correct it and deal with the consequences. So this means that these nonconformities and complaints should be treated the same and formally documented as part of your corrective action process. A lot of the time, I'll go in and audit different companies, and they will receive these complaints, but they will address them, of course, but they will not formally document them through the corrective action process. And the standard here tells us that that is what we have to do. So every customer complaint, whether it's verbal, email, should be analyzed through the corrective action process. And the reason we have this requirement is because we want to prevent the reoccurrence. And the only way we prevent it is when we formally document it. Okay? So to continue, B, evaluate the need for action to eliminate the causes of the nonconformity in order that it does not recur or occur elsewhere by reviewing and analyzing the nonconformity. So here this means to look beyond the surface issue. So not just address the surface issue, but to understand what happened. So the nonconformity itself, why it happened. So we look into the root cause, whether it's part of a larger pattern, and what needs to change so to prevent it from happening again. So this process ensures we're not just putting a band-aid on the problem, but actually healing the wound and strengthening your quality management system. For example, we have an example here of an aircraft panel paint defect. So during final inspection, a batch of aircraft panels shows uneven paint coverage. So to review, we would look at the panels that don't meet the customer's visual and durability specifications. The issue was that was first noticed by a QA during a routine inspection, and similar defects were reported 2 months ago. So this is the review, is assessing the situation. Has anything similar happened in the past or recently? We analyze, so we do the root cause analysis that will reveal the paint booths. For example, air pressure regulator could be malfunctioning. The operators were not trained to recognize the pressure fluctuations, or maintenance logs could show inconsistent calibration checks. So we need to dig deeper to analyze the problem. Determining the causes of the nonconformity, including, as applicable, those related to human factors. So causes can be determined through various methods. Most used are your 5 why analysis, fishbone diagram, is not fault tree analysis, etc. There's many different tools that can be used to determine your root cause. And when that root cause leads you to the identification of human factors, these are the human factors that we really need to identify. Again, through my auditing experience, I've seen that some organizations will just create their own human factors, which I suppose could be done. But we also have a gentleman called Gordon DuPont who used to work for Transport Canada. He identified the 12 most common preconditions that led to aviation accidents. This has become the best practice for the world. So we have 12 causes of human error: fatigue, lack of communication, complacency, lack of knowledge, lack of teamwork, distraction, lack of resources, pressure, stress, lack of assertiveness, negative norms, and lack of awareness. Because these are defined for us in the industry, it is a best practice when you identify your root cause and source of human error that it needs to be linked to one of these 12. Okay, so it must be addressed not just with retraining, which is most often what I see. Yep, it's a human factor. We're going to train the operator again. Chances are they've probably been trained very well because they're very seasoned in their jobs and what they do. Um, Consider using mistake-proofing methods, such as prevention or detection of that problem. We could use quality alerts. We could communicate this information during our reminders during daily meetings. We could be updating instructions. You have your work orders, you have your travelers that have sequences of operations. Maybe we can add into that specific operation, make sure this is verified. And of course, any additional inspection points or anything else that you can do to strengthen your system to help detection, because of course, prevention is not always possible. There is always that human factor that a human being is just tired today. And of course, that may lead to a problem. 3, determining if similar nonconformities exist or could potentially occur. So don't just fix the nonconformance. Here, we really need to think systematically. Look sideways. So are there any other areas, products, or processes where the same issue might be happening undetected? And look forward. Could this issue happen again in a different context or under slightly different conditions? So as an example, continuing with our uneven paint in this case, due to faulty pressure regulator in one paint booth. So determining if similar nonconformities exist or could occur would mean that we're going to check other paint booths for the same equipment issue. We could review the maintenance logs across all the paint booths. We could ask, could this happen with other coatings or finishes? So is this only isolated to this type of paint, to this type of finish, or can this happen in other situations? Evaluating whether training gaps or unclear procedures exist elsewhere. So next, we talk about implementing any action needed. So here we need to apply containment, correction, and corrective actions. Containment means immediate action to stop the spread of the nonconformity. Correction means the action to eliminate the detected nonconformity. So fix only this problem. Corrective actions are actions to eliminate the cause of the nonconformity and prevent a reoccurrence. So that is a permanent long-term fix. So let's take a look at another example. We have a scenario. You found uneven paint due to a faulty pressure regulator in one paint booth. The containment action is going to be to stop the bleeding. We're going to protect the customer and prevent further damage. So here we would immediately quarantine the affected panels. We would stop production in the paint booth. We would notify internal teams and hold the shipments of any product that could be affected. Inspect other panels that were painted during the same shift or maybe with the same equipment to see if the problem is wider spread. A correction action would be to fix the specific non-conforming product. So for example, this would be repainting the defective panels using a properly functioning booth. It could be replacing the panels if the repainting isn't viable or maybe it's not reworkable. And of course, documenting the disposition. So did we rework, scrap, or use as is with a concession if permitted. Corrective action, the goal is to eliminate the root cause to prevent the reoccurrence. So in this example, we would conduct a proper root cause analysis, a minimum 5 whys in the aviation industry. Discover that the pressure regulator wasn't calibrated due to a missed maintenance check. We could implement a preventive maintenance schedule with some alerts that would come up to make sure we check for that. We could train operators to recognize pressure anomalies, and of course, audit other booths for similar risks. So a lot of things can be done to prevent the problem from happening again. Next, we need to review the effectiveness of any corrective action taken. So here I have some good discussions with some organizations on the intent of this effectiveness review. So we follow-up evaluation that ensures root cause is eliminated and the problem did not recur, is unlikely to reoccur, or did not cause unintended side effects. So this is the follow-up. The effectiveness is the review. Best practice is to use a two-step process. So here is we consider the verification, which is where the corrective actions were completed as we planned, and the validation, did the problem reoccur? It's after some time. Many organizations blend the verification and validation together into one, which can be done, of course, but the concern there is they either do the verification very well or they do the validation without checking the verification, and sometimes some of the corrective actions are not quite completed. So it is really a good opportunity to separate the two, or at least have an understanding that there is that two-layer process in reviewing the effectiveness. Updating risks and opportunities determined during planning if necessary. So here we ask, does this issue reveal a new risk or change how we see an existing one? If yes, we want to update your risks and opportunity assessments that were made during the Clause 6.1 planning, such as your SWOT analysis, risk matrix, FEMA. You also may have operational risk assessments under Clause 811. Well, maybe the risks and opportunities could be updated there as well. So you have that opportunity to really go back into your system and identify this as a potential failure because it has already occurred in your organization once. There is potential for possible reoccurrence in the future. Making changes to the quality management system if necessary. So ask, does this issue reveal a weakness in our QMS that needs to be formally addressed? So making changes to the QMS could include revising your procedures, updating documentation such as work instructions, changing responsibilities, frequency of audits, modifying your training program, or adding a new KPI to your process. These changes ensure that the QMS reflects the new, improved way of working, not just a one-time fix. So every good corrective action always comes back and implements some sort of an improvement or change in a quality management system. A couple more. Here we have flow down of the corrective action requirements to an external provider when it is determined that the external provider is responsible for the nonconformity. So if the root cause lies with your external provider, your supplier or subcontractor, you have to inform them of the nonconformity, request a formal corrective action response. So you can use a supplier corrective action report, typically called a SCAR in our industry. Ensure they investigate and eliminate the root cause and verify that effectiveness of their corrective action. This is called flowing down the requirement, essentially passing the responsibility for corrective action to the party that caused the issue. Because if they caused that issue to you, there is a chance they can cause that issue to other customers. And we need to not just do this for our own good, but to protect the whole aerospace industry. When a nonconformity occurs, of course, we take specific actions when timely and effective corrective actions are not achieved. What does that mean? If the corrective action is delayed, fails to eliminate the root cause, or doesn't prevent a recurrence, organization must take further action to resolve the issue. We can escalate, we can intervene and ensure resolution. So for example, we could issue a second corrective action and identify a new root cause because evidently the initial root cause probably wasn't the right one. And then, of course, always escalate to upper management as needed. But that's what timely means, okay? And effective corrective actions have to be achieved. Corrective actions shall be appropriate to the effects of the nonconformities encountered. Scale your corrective action response based on the risk to product and product safety or quality, impact on customers or regulatory compliance, the likelihood of occurrence, and the scope of the issue, so isolated or systemic. Corrective actions should never be one size fits all. I mean, there's a difference between a cosmetic blemish versus a defect in the aerodynamic surface. So we have to cater, right, to the situation that we are dealing with, of course. The organization shall maintain documented information that defines the nonconformity and corrective action management processes. What does that mean? We have to maintain documented information, so it has to be live and current, and define our nonconformance corrective action process. So create and maintain a procedure that clearly defines how the nonconformities are identified and managed, how corrective actions are initiated, investigated, implemented, and verified, the roles and responsibilities throughout the process, and of course, records of actions taken and their effectiveness. Ensuring traceability, consistency, and accountability across the entire quality management system. So that's what this last little bit means. Next, we have nonconformance and corrective action. So 10.22, this is retaining information. Um, The organization shall, so has to, retain documented information as evidence of the nature of the nonconformities and any subsequent action taken and the results of any corrective action. So we keep records of all completed corrective actions. You have to determine that duration, of course. It could be standard. I would say minimum aerospace best practice would be minimum 11 years. That's part of your ASQR1. And of course, other customer requirements as well. But sometimes it's longer, but you need to keep those records so we can learn from them. Okay, so thank you very much. This was the end of my session for the end of my session. So before we continue to any questions, I just wanted to mention that we do have on my IS 9100D internal auditor training and lead auditor training coming up at the end of September. I'd like to join. We're extending the early bird discount, especially to our participants here today. If you would like to participate, we have a good class, a good group already signed up. And we also have our library where it's growing in content. So I do have a generic AS 9100D awareness presentation for use of all your employees. It includes your instructor notes and updates with company quality. It just needs an update with your quality policy and objectives. I provided examples that would be used as a best practice. It can be used to literally train every employee in your organization. What's new is the improvement process. So just like we just discussed the corrective actions, I now have that process defined and available for sale on our website. There's a free, and of course you will receive your free download. You will receive the corrective action template form that I created. For you. So if you're interested, you can, of course, go and check it out and purchase if you feel that you can need and strengthen your corrective action process. I'm happy to now entertain any questions that you may have. Thank you, Jian, for sharing in the chat. She's also posted a link to the store. Are there any questions for me? Feel free just to unmute yourself and ask if you have any questions.
Hey, Dagmar, this is Jason. Question regarding on our corrective action report on our internal car. If we wanted to just at the very end of it, just have like a little 3-section checkbox that, yes, no's on whether it impacted risk and opportunity, or we needed to update the QMS, or if it went back to the vendor, would that be an acceptable jump point from there to go either to a SCAR or an additional corrective action or continuous improvement doc that would say generate or initiate the change in the QMS or anything of that nature? Or would we have to continue to add to the existing corrective action that's there? Does that make
Excellent
sense?
question. Yeah, that makes sense. Excellent question,
Okay.
Jason. So I would do exactly like you suggested. So at the bottom of the corrective action, you would actually identify is do the risks and opportunities need to be updated? And it would just be a checkbox, yes or no. And then you would go to that document that needs the
Yeah.
updating. I wouldn't normally expect to see it continued in the corrective action because it would just become really, really huge.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at the free template form that I'm sharing, that I will be sharing, you will see it's exactly that down there. And I go
Awesome.
and I go a step further there with that form, and you will see that I actually identify there's a space there for identifying the corrective action as a high or low risk, because that will, after you identified the root cause, you determine whether it's a high or low risk. And if it's a high risk, that reminds you to basically go back and assess that corrective action for the risks and opportunities at the end. Very good. Thank you.
Awesome.
Anyone
No,
else?
thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Great to have you. Thank you for joining. Anyone else? Any other questions? Soren has a question in the chat. Good morning. For the effectiveness verification, can you please give some example? Yes, of course. So effectiveness verification, for example, if we had a problem in production where, for example, a feature was incorrectly a tolerance maybe wasn't correctly finished, so the dimension was out of tolerance. The effectiveness verification would be to follow up, for example, on subsequent work orders. So I would go back to do I would say a mini review. You could call it a mini audit, and I would sample a couple of other work orders, and especially work orders that followed that were for the same part number. And I would basically look to see, to say, hey, did the problem reoccur? Is it reoccurring in the same part? And is it reoccurring in similar parts? So what you want to do is at the bottom of the corrective action, you should, as a best practice, document the evidence that you've seen to be able to record it to say, hey, based on the review of these work orders, I determine that there is no reoccurrence of the issue, and that will allow you to close the corrective action. So if you look at the form again that I'm sharing, that form has a statement for the verification. So have all the corrective actions been completed as planned, and a whole box for evidence for the validation where you will record and write down what you've validated. Excellent question. Thank you so much for that, Soren. Great to have you today. Um, uh, can we uh, can we ask if there's any other questions on camera for just a quick second, if we could take a picture? And of course, we can screen share the form for you if you'd like to see the corrective action form, we could do that as well. Go ahead. So, Gian, would you like to share the corrective action form? And I
Yes.
think that'll be great for me to share it and show everyone what, just to run through it. Some of you may have forms that are very similar already in your organizations, but there might be a thing or two that you might want to add to your form, or just use mine as a template, whatever works. So this is what the form looks like. You have the description of the nonconformity at the top with the corrective action source, who it's initiated by. You have your immediate containment. If it's needed, sometimes the immediate containment just cannot be done because the issue has already occurred in the past. Identifying the root cause, that's section B. So here is for the whys, for the root causes, and here do I identify, is it related to human factors, and if there is a risk, so high or low risk. There's the corrective action space below for the corrective actions, and then who they're assigned to and the day to do as a best practice. So you can track this and follow up. And if you continue to the second page, um, there is the verification and validation. So I just last night modified this form a little bit further, so that I know this isn't the latest one, but you can see the box there, the space for the verification and validation. So what I added was I added a line to say, has verification been completed? Have all the actions been done? And the box for the evidence for your validation, and who's reviewed it, who signs off, and of course the follow-up there for you, is a corrective action closed, or is there a new corrective action report that needs to be generated, and you can put the number there. So I don't like to keep corrective actions open for too long. You will close this one and raise a new one to continue with the process. Okay, thank you very much, Jeanne. Thank you all for being here with us. I'm glad we made it in the time that was given. And I hope to see you all, whether it's through auditing, consulting, or in my support and training. I know I will be seeing Nabila later on this morning. So please keep in touch. And if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. I'm here to support the aerospace industry as best as I can. I'm here for you all. Okay? Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.